Good evening. This is Rob Bell, getting the record straight. This is the Truth to Power segment, and it's actually a sort of a special edition. I actually was going to do something else, had another guest in mind, and just things got so wacky, crazy, and disgusting last week. I said, I've got to do something about this. I got to at least vent and talk about it. Please hit the subscribe button, share it, like it. Even if you don't like it, but please do so anyway. Don't take those masks off quite yet and stop getting up in everybody's grill. Stay safe, social distance, all that good stuff. But do subscribe. We're getting up there. And as I said, this is getting the record straight. And as I just said, last week, your president said that he was not even going to consider renaming the 10 military installations in the United States that are named after Confederate racist generals. And yeah, so I heard that, and he's a real tough guy, real, stand-up dude, and, with all the Secret Service people around him, made this proclamation. So this was Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, almost a week ago. And so I kind of waited. I guess I found out, I saw the news report Wednesday evening. So Thursday, I'm like, I know the Congressional Black Caucus is going to they're going to be out on the, Capitol steps denouncing this. After all, it is 2020, right? And I figured, some black military organizations, veterans, generals, colonels, whatever, would probably be with them. And, we'd have this thing settled. So that was Thursday. Don't hear anything. Friday. Don't hear anything. A couple of snippets. I did come across a couple of articles where, some black military people had been interviewed and they were very upset. But anyway, I lasted till about Saturday, and I called the guy who's on the phone right now, who's going to be our guest. And I said, what are you doing, Kedrick? I had something else planned for Tuesday, but do you want to sit in and let's talk about this? Because I can't take it. I don't know how people aren't up in arms, particularly people who are in the service, particularly our political leaders. How do you just let the schmuck basically say, hey, niggers, I'm not doing anything. I don't care if they were racist. I don't care if they did fight against, they were traitors. I'm not doing it. So I had first gotten wind of this a couple of months ago, maybe 3, certainly 2.5 months ago. And as I was like biting a hole in my lip reading this, because I was like, I can't believe this. This is our tax money that pays for these installations, and you're going to name them after, blatant, straight up racist. And people who died to keep black people enslaved. And so the article, I can't remember what magazine it was in. It might have been even the New York Times. And what really blew me away was that in the article they said, well, there's a congresswoman who's quietly trying to put together some kind of, bill to get the names changed. And that's what really just took me at quiet. We're quietly trying to do this in 2020. Racist. Okay? So there's 10 military installations, some of the ones you probably know, Fort Bragg, Fort Benning, Fort Hood. And I mean, these are named after people who didn't maybe change their mind later. They just absolute the worst. Racism now, slaves forever. So, anyway, in these citadels of might and power, these military installations funded through our tax dollars again. So it is now, what are we, Tuesday? We're recording Tuesday. Again, I've just heard like snippets, no organized, convening of people, of black military people, no outspoken press conference, nothing. I understand Nancy Pelosi's trying to do something, pass a bill, get a bill passed. And it is just, like I said, I just had to do this today because this is 2020. And my question is, where are we right now? I don't see any shortage of, I know I saw something on Facebook. I've seen it a couple of times that now we have, it's like the largest class of black women who are in West Point. And a black general was just put as the head of the chief of staff, one of the chief of staff. I think he's in the Air Force. We got the blacks in the West Point Army on the football team. But and nobody has said anything. Nobody's speaking up. Nobody's stepping forward. Like I said, a few people, and really muted kind of this. In fact, right before I started, I'm going to bring it up again, Jay Johnson, who was the Secretary of Homeland Security under Obama, went to Morehouse, military man. Like I said, he's the head of Homeland Security. Now, this is the character who years ago decided gave a speech somewhere, I think it was at a university, and said that Martin Luther King would understand the wars that the United States are in, all of which are aggressive wars and illegal, but he took it upon himself to make that statement. Anyway, I happened to look, I was checking to make sure I had his bio correct, and I looked, and evidently, what's his name? Guy from CNN interviewed him, and he had some mealy-mouthed response about this and basically said it was complicated. So we haven't asked a whole lot of black leadership or black military leadership. You've had the Iraq war of aggression. Millions of people spoke out against that. You had the kidnapping of Aristide, democratically elected president in Haiti. American Marines went, got him, took him, sent him to Africa. Straight up kidnapping. And of course, nothing was done about that. In fact, he was told he wasn't welcome in the hemisphere. You had the coup in Honduras. You've got AFRICOM. We've got military all through Africa now. There's 54 countries in Africa. We have never supported any one of them in terms of their independence and freedom. Never, including South Africa. And by the way, I don't know if he was the first leader of AFRICOM, the African Command, but certainly one. I think he was the second one. I'm not sure, but black man, black general from Morgan University in Baltimore, HBCU. Jay Johnson from HBCU from Morehouse. We had the brutal murder and rape of Lavina Johnson in Iraq. Army told us that she raped herself and stuck a shotgun in her mouth and blew her head off. And just the whole general aggression. We haven't asked anything of the military leadership or the black military leadership or the black political leadership about any of those things. Now the president basically gives you the middle finger. Says, I know it's racism, but I don't care. And we haven't heard a word. So I asked our guest on the phone to please let me vent a little. I had to get that off because it's sickening and it's disgusting. And the brother who I'm about to introduce you to is a veteran, and he's one of the most down, don't take any tea for the fever, pro-black, social justice, black activists I know. Matter of fact, him and his boy are the two next to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. These two guys come to mind, but the one who's here on the phone, Kedrick Bellamy, he's a brother from Jersey, from Camden, grew up in East Orange and Newark. As I said, he's a retired naval officer, in fact, a lieutenant commander, I believe, of almost 25 years in the service. But he promoted African-centered education in the Navy, in the service. And, it took a lot of courage and a lot of heart to do that, especially when he was doing it. But he's joined, engaged, and helped lead many black organizations, including in COBRA, which is where I met him years ago, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. He's also a part of the National Black United Front and the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, ASCAC. And they all help to inform his work on black education, African-centered education in the Navy. He's currently a human resource executive, and so I want to introduce you to Kedrick Bellamy. Kedrick, how you doing this evening?
Pretty good, Rob. Thanks for the invitation.
No problem. I apologize, man, but I had to get some of that off my chest because it's too much. It's too much. But yeah. So before we kind of get into some of this, man, let's talk. Let's go back over this bio a little bit. As in the Navy and kind of what brought you to getting into a more conscientious or conscious black consciousness, and then becoming a activist and educator in the Navy.
So I guess I would start with just elementary school, really, in East Orange. Back then in the 70s, we had like our local hero was then Leroy Jones, who became, of course, Amiri Baraka, and those guys in the black arts movement really pushed for black history in our schools. So we grew up, hearing a lot more than just the Martin Luther King speech every year. And I remember even when Duke Ellington passed, I think I was in the 5th grade, like the teacher dedicated the part of the next class to talk about how classy he was and how brilliant he was. And so, you just grew up hearing these things, not necessarily triggering any activism, but just an awareness. Great books. I remember my Aunt Connie letting me borrow, and I knew I had hit the big league. I was 11. She let me borrow Dick Gregory's Nigger. And she said, "Don't you crease my cover." And, she kind of went in on me. So I knew I had to treat that book right. But the title was just so provocative. So looking at her shelf. So you grew up with those kind of things.
And Kedrick.
Go ahead.
Kedrick, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I had run my mouth so long. So let me pause for a minute and we're going to come right back.